Welcome to Wife's a Bitch with Victoria Arnstein and Krystyna Huchinson. She's
Hello.
my guest today. I'm very excited to have you on.
Thank you for
I
having
mean, we
me.
could just talk this way, it's like
Yeah, sure.
very, very casual. And
Casual in the most beautiful apartment I've been in
oh,
a very long time.
thank you. Welcome anytime.
Oh,
Oh.
okay. Well, you're gonna regret saying that. If you were my mom, I wouldn't move out.
Okay, well then shoot, my daughter's never leaving. So I lived in a nice place when my mother married my stepfather in on the Upper East Side, and my stepfather did not want me too comfortable. He was like, "You're gonna get married, right?" Like it's
Sweet.
yeah. I
Love you
was like,
too.
yeah, no. It was like, okay, yeah, I would rather, and I ended up marrying somebody that didn't have a lot of money, and he had we ended up getting a little studio apartment. And I mean, I had to literally call up my mom to see if it was raining out. I'm like, is it raining? I'm in a courtyard. I can't see. So it was so tiny. It was just like I married for love.
Yeah,
I
that's
was,
good.
yeah, I was, yes and no. I mean, it's a long,
I'm just a business partner,
it is,
sure.
thank you. I mean, every time I say that, people are like, it's
It
not.
really is though. When you think about it that way, you could set yourself up for
Now
success.
that I'm older, I definitely know that. And I'm just going to put this a little bit lower so I don't keep looking
Yeah,
at
I
myself.
hear you.
I get so distracted. What happens with me is that I've become the person I used to make fun of. And I
That's
like me
like
better.
sweet poetry.
I like me better. Are you
Good.
comfortable?
You're very comfortable, yeah.
I like me
Oh,
better this
thank
way.
you.
We're just getting to know each other, so this is all organic, and I think it's great.
Oh yeah, it's ripe for
It's like
podcasting material.
it's great.
The theater of
It's a lot
love.
of surprise. Yeah. A lot of surprise elements of things. Like you just discovered I'm a painter because my painting was in the back.
Such a
It was
good
like,
painter.
thank
I
you.
know the painting captured my spirit.
Really?
Yes, I have a lot of paintings in my apartment of women holding flowers. I
Oh,
don't know why. I didn't do it on purpose, and then I noticed I'm like, oh wow, this is a thing I really like, and so that struck me. But also the colors you chose to use,
oh, really?
so
Thank
beautiful. I'm
you.
like, I want to. If you do commissions, let me know.
I've oil painted years ago. It was like one of these places that my mom went to when she was younger, and I used to love and admire her paintings. And one day I was just like, you know what? Someone told me from my penmanship that I should take up painting. It was
Oh,
actually a rabbi in Israel told someone else, and she tracked me down. At the time, there were no cell phones. It was like in 1980 something, 88. And she's like, "Oh, I just wanted to tell you before you got on the plane, it was in Israel." She goes, "The rabbi so and so said that, when he was checking everybody's penmanship, he said, you should go into art." And I'm like, really? So I took this art class that at the time I was kind of prudish. I didn't want to do nudes. I was like, I was
were
a,
they gonna make? Oh, I guess if you do art class, they're gonna at some point make you paint a naked
right. So
person.
this wasn't. This
Okay.
was like all Hasidic women and then me. And
Okay.
it was like the weirdest setup. And it was like this little place in Brooklyn where I grew up. And it was so relaxing every week for 3 hours. It was just, you had to put layers and layers and layers. And I learned how to paint that way for a couple of years. And I loved it. It was my
It's
getaway.
meditation.
Yeah, it was my meditation.
Yeah.
And it was all I had really to meditate. And I made it for my father, and then he passed away. So he never
Oh.
got to see it.
Hmm.
Right. So,
We got to see it in
because
the
he took us to
afterlife.
botanical gardens all the time. And, that was his favorite thing was like, looking at beautiful colors and flowers and stuff. So I made it for him, and then he passed away. I was like, oh, he
Damn.
never got to see it.
Did you I always ask this to people, did you hear from him since he passed away?
I actually did have very good visits in my sleep.
Yeah, a lot of times
Deep,
dreams.
deep, deep sleep of a really meaningful dream.
Hmm.
It was actually on a very holy holiday of Yom Kippur, and it was only a few weeks after he died. And I asked him a few questions. Like we were all in the kitchen in Brooklyn, and I'm one of five kids.
Okay.
We're all trying to talk to him, and then he says, "Okay, one at a time." It was sunset. Sunset happens when there's a meaningful dream for me for some reason.
Huh.
When someone's about to die or died, sunset is where I speak to them for some whacked out reason. I don't know
Very
what it
interesting.
is. And I love sunsets. They're very mystical to me, more than a
And
sunrise.
spiritual.
Yes, very. Like I love a sunset. Like I lived in Hawaii. We had a sunrise.
Yeah,
So I was like always missing that sunset. Yeah, I'd have to go somewhere to get that sunset because I was on the east and I wanted the west.
right.
I love the sunset. To me,
It
that's
is.
so dramatic because I love the night.
Yeah. Oh, me too. I mean,
That's
yeah, being a
probably
comic,
why.
it's like
Yeah.
my creativity comes alive at night. I totally agree with sunsets. They're mesmerizing in a way. that not much else is.
Yeah, and not only that, but what then there's this other flip side when I first had my babies, and I had 2 a year apart. So they was yeah, it was like
Girl.
I have 3 kids, but I had 2 a year apart. And it was just so dramatic that the things that used to happen to me during sunset was very sad and depressing. It
Interesting.
was like, "Oh no, I'm getting into the night. I'm scared." And it
Mm.
was just like this a whole reverse of what I used to think of as sunset. It
Mm.
was just like, I'm really scared now. And I would get these negative thoughts, these negative fantasies
Right.
of like, oh my God, what if I drop my kid? In the middle of the night, I would have these horrible visions of, oh my God, I left my kid when we were in the supermarket just for a second. I turned around and he or she could have been kidnapped. Like these
Mm.
horrible fantasies that were negative.
Yeah.
And then I'd wake up and the sun would come up and I'd be like, oh, what? That doesn't happen.
Wow.
That doesn't happen.
Maybe that's some past life stuff.
Something weird, something very strange. And I tell you, I lived in Hawaii. I don't know how this became about me. This is really just an
I'm just
organic.
so fascinated about your story.
My we used to live in Hawaii and I used to swim in like the JCC pool for 15, 20 minutes. We went to Hawaii because my husband ran races. Um, and we ended up there. You know, he did the Ironman race. He's like this ultra athlete, crazy, crazy athlete. And
You bagged a hottie.
he's 7 years younger also. But
Okay.
I know, right? But he acts 60. He's actually on Mount Everest right now.
You
He's
are so cool.
I'm not cool.
What
He's
New
crazy.
Yorker?
He's crazy. No, anyway, we ended up in my in Hawaii and because of a race that he did and I just didn't want to leave. I just didn't want to come home.
Yeah,
My whole
that's a
family
spiritual
was in yeah,
place.
my whole family was in Brooklyn and my mom was in Israel because she remarried after my father died and I was like, "Well, what am I doing in Westchester?" Like
True.
I had no like spiritual feeling there. So I went to Hawaii, raised my kids there for 7 years. My daughter still lives out there. She moved to LA, actress, and then moved back during the pandemic. She never left. So, because everything's
Lucky
self
you.
tape, everything's self tape.
Right.
So the ocean there was just so magnetic to me.
Hmm. You get like
I have
I'm
a
not
picture of it.
religious, but I'm very spiritual. Like every time I go into the ocean, I feel like I'm
I
getting
wrote a I
baptized.
wrote a book. So
Mhm.
I used to
Whoa.
swim. That was not a filter. I would swim to that island and back.
Oh
So I
my
don't know if you guys
God.
see it's called the Mokulua Islands. It's a mile out and a mile back. But I'm like, oh, maybe because I was a runner, but I wasn't really a swimmer. I'm like, maybe I could do that. Doesn't look too far.
It's similar.
So I go there and I was like, holy shit, this is really insane. And I come back, there's coral reefs, it's drifting me. I have no idea. I only go in a bikini and goggles and earplugs. That's it. That's my whole thing.
Wow.
Maybe swim gloves because it gives you more resistance. But I was like, yeah, I think I could do it. And I would do it after a run and a hike. And then I would just go. And I got faster and faster and faster. 2 years in, my neighbor calls me and she goes, did you hear what happened to the guy that swims in the area that you swim in all day? And I'm like, what? His feet were cut off by a tiger shark, 15 feet, 15-foot tiger shark.
Okay, that's a match that
You know the worst kind of shark there is?
is is not a great white.
Well, it's the shark that's behind you. Anyway, no, it's really no,
Hey,
it really is a tiger shark and the great white. Yeah, those two. So I was like
wow, you were
freaked out
protected.
and spooked because I went to New York on an impromptu, like last minute thing. And then my neighbor calls me and I'm like, oh my God. I was spooked about it because I was in New York.
Yeah.
Then I went, and my kids were still there. I'm like, don't go in, like Jaws, like get out of the water, get out of
Right.
the water. And I used to think that that area was just like protected, like it was a bay. It
Yeah.
wasn't.
Jesus.
But here's what happened to me. 3 months later, I'm like, well, they got the shark.
Did they?
They said they got the shark. I mean, they said that the guy that got it had happened to, he punched it, grabbed the eyeball, and then it went away. It was like a mom, like in the birthing situation or something.
Oh.
So that's why they were hungrier. And it was also a lot of rain for 30 days. So it gets cloudy in the water.
Okay.
So it was
Yeah, because
just the
sharks usually
weirdest
don't mess
time.
with humans
Right. But it was at
unless
11 o'clock in the morning, which is weird because that's not feeding time. So it's
okay.
like, so I was spooked. But then 3 months later, I'm like, well, I don't think it'll happen again. And I went back 1,000 times after.
See, that's power of intent.
But now that I'm in New York, I'm like, what the hell was I thinking?
I get it.
So in New York, I'm very weirded out by it and I'm afraid to go back. But in Hawaii, I'm like, the
Well, your gut.
reward is higher than the risk.
Yeah, I always say like, with doing something that could be potentially dangerous. I'm like, like, I just check in with myself. I'm like, how does this feel? Do I feel like I want to do it, or I feel like I don't want to do it? If I don't want to do it, I won't.
So you really go by your gut.
Yeah, I try to. My gut has
Never
been
really
messed
failed
up
you?
for a while. No, it's failed
Oh.
me most of the time, but now it's starting to finally not fail me
Oh,
because
really?
I'll get emotional. I think what it is deciphering between what's a gut reaction and what's a trigger. Because triggers are very loud.
That's
Gut
interesting.
reaction is very subtle. Intuition is very subtle. So I would so often pay attention to the voices that were jumping up and down and screaming and waving their arms. And when that started to quiet down, I was like, oh, wait, there's this voice here that's super calm. When it's my gut telling me something, there's no anxiety accompanied by it.
Wow.
Yeah. I've done a
That's
lot of
so
childhood trauma work on
I'm
myself.
sure. And tell everybody you had something the way I met you was you were a comedian, you were doing stand up at the Stand. I saw
Mhm.
you there and you were talking about like it's not I mean, tell them your story if you want to tell them
Which
really
part,
briefly.
which bit did
Where
you
you were
see?
just like, I don't know who my brothers and sisters are because
Oh, finding out I was a sperm donor baby. Yeah, that was 3 years ago. My mom was adopted, and we never knew much about her biological family. I got her a 23andMe kit for Christmas because I was like, this is so cool. We'll get to find out. And she had a brother we didn't know if he was in jail or had passed away. And she had a sister that passed away and a sister that was alive. But I'm like, there's could be relatives out there that we could connect with. This could be really cool. So she opened it on Christmas and didn't want to do it. And I was confused by that. And I was like, okay. So I took the kit home, split in the two. And when I got the results back, I didn't get the sibling thing yet. At first I was like, oh my God, we're Jewish. It said 51% Ashkenazi.
you're
And I knew
kidding.
my dad wasn't Jewish. So I was like, we're Jewish. That's so cool. And like, if you're the Jewish one, the mother, I'm more Jewish than Corinne, who's also Jewish, but it's her
Okay.
dad's side. And so I was like, that's really cool. And then my mom just was like, oh yeah. I'm like, okay, what is that? And then I started getting messages from people because there's an option on the app where if you have a DNA relative, do you want them to know and do you want
Yeah.
them to be able to contact you? And I said, absolutely. And a bunch of people, women, started messaging me saying they were my half sister. And I was very
This is
confused.
fascinating.
And I was like, I was trying to put the pieces together. I'm like, did my dad donate sperm? Or maybe my uncle did? Or it's my uncle's, I don't know. It's
So
weird.
you didn't know you were a sperm donor baby yet.
No,
Your mom never told you.
they never told me or my dad. My dad could have told me too.
Were
Um,
they married?
they're married. Yeah, they're
Oh.
still married.
Oh, okay.
And they saw me take the kit home. I'm like, that would have been a great time to tell me. That would have been great.
Wow.
I
I wanted to give you a hug right after that set.
yeah,
And I think I did. I said, I want to
probably,
give you
yeah.
a hug because that's all I saw.
Yeah,
It was funny. You made it very funny, but
thank
I
you.
was like, this girl has some trauma.
And you know what's so funny? Of all the trauma that I've had, that one I don't even care about. That's
It's
not the one.
true.
Yeah, no, that's
That's
not
not even the one. I'd love
not
to hear
even
more. Oh my God, would you?
close. If anything, I felt I didn't feel betrayed until years later, maybe about a year ago, because I realized I was going to doctor's appointments and they ask you your family history, and I
Right.
was writing my father's family history. But I'm like, that what the hell is that? Like, I've been writing the wrong medical information. This is a whole other person.
So
What
you're
like
like angry with your parents for not
I don't
telling you?
really yeah, I'm disappointed in them for not
Okay.
telling me. I've gotten through that though, so
Okay.
I don't carry that at all.
All right.
If anything, I'm like, when I found out, I'm like, what a cool experience to really think that your father is your biological father. I mean, he's my dad. He raised me, and he raised me like I was his own. So I don't, I understand why they didn't tell me.
Okay.
They did not foresee this technology happening in the future.
Okay.
And
That's true.
and the reason, if anything, my immediate reaction, other than the shock, was wow, you guys went through great lengths to get me here. Like, that's very special. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes when you're conceived, you don't, your parents might tell you, they might not, but like maybe it's planned, maybe it's not. And if anything, I felt like, oh, wow, this is really, really cool. But my brother, my whole life, he's 8 years older than me. I love my brother. He's one of my best friends. Um, he always told me that I was the mailman's baby growing up because I don't look like anybody in my family. And I was like, I always thought it was funny. And, I was like, whatever, DJ. And my mom and I both have curly hair. So I was like, well, clearly I'm related.
Right.
And then when I found out,
What was your mom's egg, right? Or no?
yes, yeah.
Oh,
So I
okay.
was
So you do
biologically
it.
my
Yeah,
mother's
yeah,
and
yeah.
then a sperm donor's. And when I found out, I actually filmed myself calling my mom because I was like, there's no way my dad's not my biological father. But I set it up just in case it was funny because we're comics. So anything potentially
This is a
tragic,
reality show.
absolutely. And so I filmed myself and I was like, I'm going to find out my family's not my family. And I asked my mom, I was like, hey, I'm getting these messages from this 23andMe app from half siblings. I said, Dad's my biological father. And she's like, huh? I'm like, Dad is my biological father. And she goes, well, I don't think we should talk about this over the phone. And my face, I was like, that's not a yes or an okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Did
So
she know you had it on speaker and stuff? Like on a
I
film?
don't think she was knowing.
Right.
I was like, okay, well, this video is going to be locked up in the vault.
And now you're talking about it. So
Yeah, and they didn't want me to, and
I'm
they're
sure.
actively angry that I
Okay.
am talking about it.
I think you're helping people.
But yeah, and also it's my
It's your
experience.
experience.
And on top of that, I don't fault them. They
Right.
should have told
Right.
me, of
Right.
course, but I get why they didn't. My dad, didn't want me to see him differently. I
Right.
totally understand that. It was all out of love,
Right.
right? But my dad was the one who didn't want me to know, and my mom actually wanted me to know, and she was carrying this guilt her whole life, my whole life.
I see.
And so I'm like, wow, that must have been a lot for you, Mom, like, and him.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Just it's like the elephant in the room.
It's like even just you want some water, I have some.
Uh,
If even the whole like DNA thing, I mean DNA testing for criminals. Criminals are like
Uh-oh.
20 years later they found my things. You know what I mean? Like how they did not anticipate that.
No,
I'm not saying it's the same thing. I'm just saying that, you're right about the science not
we thought we
being
could keep a
taken.
secret.
Yeah, secrets. That's amazing, huh?
Family secrets, man.
Like nothing is off the table now with AI now. I mean, anything is possible.
Yeah.
To now dig into things is even harder with AI because now you could Photoshop anything and be like, and put someone else's face on your face.
I know. I'm waiting for the
That's
day that
scary.
myself or my friend's face gets dubbed over a porn video, and I'm
Me
going to
too.
feel so
Sure.
violated enough
Me
to work
too.
through that.
But I think that after a while, it's going to be desensitized because people
Right.
will be like, it's not real.
I mean,
Nothing's going to
porn's
be
already desensitizing people, right? Yeah.
right.
So
So yeah, there's
eh,
going to be that whole
yeah, and that's why I'm obsessed with near-death experiences, people who have medically died and come back. I watch those videos on YouTube instead of watching like TV. I'll
right.
watch those,
Yeah,
and
YouTube's great like that.
it's fantastic.
I mean, pick and choose what you want. Are you
Yeah.
kidding?
Yeah.
It's the best thing.
But there's so much knowledge to gain from people who've died and come back. Like they have
Oh,
the
I'm very
most
fascinated by that.
the most transcending spiritual experience,
Yeah,
and they're all so grounded, and they're all like, guys, this is a play. We came here to play a role. Some people play the role of the bad guy. That's a part in a play. When you're an actor and you play the bad guy, you're not an actual bad person. You are portraying a bad. That's like a bad person in your life today.
wow.
Even the people that do the absolute worst, heinous things, that was their role in this play of Earth. And with that in mind, I was like,
Wow.
and there's this concept I was introduced to them. Like, I'm going to choose to believe this. It really resonates with me. We choose our parents before we're born, and they choose us to learn lessons. And I've seen enough
I believe in
people.
lessons.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what life is, right? And so I've seen enough people in these near-death experience videos talk about that concept. So I'm like, okay, this has to be true. And it resonates with me a lot. And so anytime I get really worked up about the parent thing, I'll get sad or whatever, I will go, I didn't choose loving parents this lifetime. And that's okay because the lessons I've learned, I love who I am. And my brother and I talk about this a lot. Like, parents are very difficult in a lot of ways, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Wow.
Because when you have to fight for your inner peace, it's really enjoyable once you get there.
It's really a great take. I tell you the truth. I believe in lessons. I wrote a book about it, actually, not just
I love
about
the
it.
title, Impress Yourself.
Impress yourself. Anyway,
That's so funny. I was talking to my friend last night about how her and I are very much on the same page creatively and like life
that's
wise.
great.
We approach life
That's
very
great.
similarly.
So hard to find that.
It is. And when you find it, oh, hold
Keep
on
it.
tight.
Yeah.
And so we Zoom once every other. She used to be my part-time assistant, but we Zoom at once every other week on our own accord and just exchange creative ideas and give each other feedback. And I was telling her, I'm like, it's really cool to love how you handle something. I've never felt that about myself. But I was talking to her about like children, wanting children. And I go, I love how I approach kids in terms of me. For me personally, if I have a child, that will be amazing and a fun adventure and a learning experience. And if I don't have a child, it's okay. So
Right.
like whatever is meant to happen,
That's a
I
great
fully
attitude.
trust that that is going to be the right path and it's going to be great.
I mean, I respect people that say, I just don't want children.
Yeah.
I can't do it. But then they're surprised sometimes when they don't have their abortion and they're like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I had this child.
Yeah.
So you have those two that you're a really mature place, I'll tell you. I don't know if you could have gotten there at in your 20s.
And I couldn't have gotten there if I didn't have the parents I had.
So there you go.
So,
Like, so lessons I've always said, and I said this in my last podcast, I said that I think that having the right people in your life, I mean, you're really one person away from destruction and one person away from success. One person.
so true, Victoria.
That's so messed up. That if you think about it that way, you really want to choose wisely.
Yes.
So knowing that, that's the one prayer I always say, or put that out in the universe, like for my children, for myself, just one person, and get them out as soon as possible. Yeah, it'll sting, and you don't want that feeling, but you know what? I know it's for the best. I know it is, because they came in for a lesson. And by the way, if you don't learn that lesson the first time,
oh, you will learn it again.
You're going to keep getting the same lesson over and over again. I really
there's
believe
evidence
that.
of it everywhere.
100%.
There's evidence in everybody's own individual lives. But then look at the lives of your closest people in with you. They have gone through that.
Who are coming into your life for a reason, who are not coming into your life for a reason. And, you know, why didn't it happen for me at this time? I know I wasn't supposed to go into comedy till after I got married. I wanted it beforehand. I didn't do it.
Right.
Well, for whatever reason, I grew up in a small community in Brooklyn, and I'm like, oh, no one will marry me if I become a comedian.
Right.
Which is valid.
Your instinct wasn't off.
Right. It was valid because it was like, you know, what kind of guy is going to handle me telling about him or my personal life on stage?
Yeah.
It takes a special kind of person.
Yeah, which is the one you want to marry. But I totally get it.
My husband actually suggested it after we were married, but he was like, yeah, and he had no idea I wanted to do it. So that's really weird. 15 years into our marriage.
You guys were meant to cross paths.
Or he wanted me at the house. Either way, it didn't matter. It didn't matter, right? So I ended up finally doing it. But I didn't have the experience as a 20-year-old to talk about stuff that was funny. Yeah, observational stuff, I could have.
Yeah.
But look, I had stuff also because I was a virgin when I got married at 30.
Wow.
That's the reaction I usually get. Yeah.
Whoa.
Do I recommend it? Not anymore.
That's a good Jewish girl move, right?
It was a Jewish girl move, is the way I was brought up. But I also, after 25, I was like, well, I mean, I was a late bloomer anyway. I waited this long, and do I want to get traumatized and roll over and not see the guy? I thought that it was like, oh my God, it was going to like change my life. It didn't. It was like, it was overrated.
Also, too, the first couple times you have it, you're like,
painful.
One, out.
At 30.
And then two.
You know what 30 is? It's probably way harder because it's stronger at that point.
Yeah. That time is.
Believe me. He didn't even believe me until the wedding night. He was like,
but you were
together
really before the wedding and you didn't have sex. So
right. Which is amazing that he got married to me. Like I really sold him on really nothing. I didn't even do all the other kinky stuff that everyone thinks. I know. It's crazy. I didn't even do that stuff. It was really like my personality.
He really loved you for you, Victoria. That's amazing.
It's awesome. I didn't even think about that.
And this wasn't the guy with the studio apartment. Is another person?
Yeah, same guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, we didn't even have a studio apartment. We got it together. I got that apartment.
So wait, was it love at first sight?
He really liked me at first, and I thought he was good looking, but I was kind of dating somebody else, but he was playing games, the other guy.
Yeah.
My husband at the time, I was working at a jewelry store. He walked in, we started talking and everything, and it was like 45 minutes in. He goes, I got to go. I'm like, so go. I'm not holding you hostage. So he leaves, and I said, well, how old are you? He's like, what do you mean, how old am I? I'm like, well, I don't know. You kind of have a maturity that, are you 35? Are you even 21? He had just turned 21 that week.
Wow.
I'm like, I don't have to answer these questions. I'm like, oh, I didn't know for sure. So he's like, well, you can call me 3 times and then I'll answer your question. I'm like, what are you, Rumpelstiltskin? I'm not calling you 3 times. He leaves his card. He goes 3 times and he walks out. The next day, I was like, ooh, it was a wintry, cold day. It was a jewelry store on Madison Avenue. I was there for 3 years. It was my last week there. I was going to go travel. I ended up looking at this card. I'm like, I got to find out how old this guy is. I call him up because you have 2 more times. I go, no, wait. I go, okay, I'm going to hang up. He goes, no, wait. Now you have to go out with me, and then I'll tell you. I'm like, this guy's crazy. All right, I'll go out with you. So I went out with him, and he called me every single, like the whole day the next day, like the hour after hour. And at the time, there was no real,
after hour.
Like, he didn't even know there was no caller ID at the time. It was like 1998.
Okay.
And it was like just starting out with call. He didn't know I had it. So he just kept calling. And I'm like, oh, poor guy. He doesn't play games. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
So I naturally was not that interested because I looked at him like a kind of like a friend.
Yeah.
you know? And the other guy was away on vacation. I told him, if you go away with your boys, I'm telling you now, I'm going to get engaged. He goes, oh, yeah? He came back. He goes, are you married with 2 kids yet? I go, no, but I'm almost getting engaged because my husband said at the time, he goes, I'm going to marry you.
Whoa. What
Because,
witchery?
finally on the date, I said, how old are you? He goes, what's the difference? I go, what? Just tell me.
Yeah,
He
there's a
goes,
reason he's not telling you.
I'm 21. I go, oh, I was 26. I was 27. I said, oh my God, you're 21. That's my brother's age. He goes, so? I said, that's my youngest brother's age. I have 3 brothers. That's my youngest. He goes, yeah, but what? I'm
That's
not.
why I didn't tell you. He didn't want you to
He goes,
associate it with something
I
negative.
don't want to get married. I go, well, I do. And I started walking away. He grabbed my arm. He goes, all right, all right, all right. Let's just go for dinner. And that was it. So we went for dinner. And we would just became friends. And then I was like, I hung out at my brother's apartment. He was away. I hung out there, and I think I slept there that night. And we were just sitting on the couch, and he was like, he was like, I don't know, I don't know if I'm ready to get married or in your world, whatever. I don't know if this is what you want. So maybe we shouldn't go out anymore. I'm like, what are you playing hard to get? Were you joking? I'm
Great
like,
response.
don't worry about it. I'm like, I'll be fine. And then,
Calm down,
yeah,
pussy.
yeah, like I was like, okay. And then we ended up, he ended up calling me the whole next day, and it was just we were friends,
Yeah,
but he really liked me.
that helps.
He even told his grandmother was like on her deathbed in the hospital, like she broke her hip, and he's like, I think I met the girl I'm going to marry. And then I went to her funeral. Like I didn't know she was going to be the great grandmother of my kids.
Wow.
But I went to the funeral and he was so grateful I came. It was only like 3 dates in. And I went to the
Yeah.
funeral and I heard him really crying at the eulogy. And I'm like, what a nice guy?
Yeah, it touches feelings.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
but we had ups and downs. Let me tell you, we're
Course.
married for 25 years.
Oh,
I
you're
know.
still married, right?
Married,
Yeah.
we're still married.
Wow.
We went through very hard
Relationship goes
times.
through so many
It,
iterations.
yeah. So
And then kids.
Yeah. So the kids happened like it was like a year later. I got married. I got pregnant. I had 2 kids in 1 year. He was like a young guy
When
at
you got pregnant that
23.
second time, are you like, are you fucking kidding
No, I
me?
did it on purpose because I have negative B blood type.
Okay.
Now everyone knows. But anyway, it doesn't matter because with that, you have to take a ROGAM shot. And that means that you might not be able to have a kid because your antibodies might be mixed with the father's and they don't know who the father is. So they give you the mother that in the 7th month of pregnancy and right after birth.
Okay.
And if you don't take that, you possibly can't have a second child. So I didn't
Okay.
want to take any chances. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, well, this one needs a sibling.
Oh,
We're
so you
already
just went
30.
through it. You're like, all right, just
Yeah, yeah, let's
pump the
just
other one
have
out
them. Like,
quick.
yeah, exactly. It's like
I know
rolling the
what I'm doing
dice.
now.
Yeah, but it's like rolling the dice. You don't know what you're getting. So they're a year apart. Then I had another one like a couple of years later, and that was easier to deal with. But I don't know where I was going with
Marriage
this.
is a team. You have to be a
So
team.
that's what I wanted to talk about. Marriage, to me, we had to break up. We were separated for like 5, 6 months. We were
Wow.
separated, and it was hell on me. He wanted it. He wanted to get
He won.
divorced twice. One time he gave me papers, divorce papers. Now, the last 5 years, best ever. I couldn't have dreamt up a better marriage.
What?
Yeah.
How'd you get there?
So there was a lot of work involved.
Of
We
course.
did go to therapy. That worked for the first time. The second time was a little harder. Um, I didn't know where he wanted to go with that. And I even moved out.
Wow.
So this was like traumatizing for me. And then I finally, like, I got out of it by doing certain things to get myself out of depression. Comedy saved my life.
Yeah.
I became a comic. Um, so I don't know if anybody really, I don't even know if I even talked about it yet or if I was going to bring it up now. My husband went to jail for 9 months.
Ooh, badass.
That's you'd think that it's not the kind of jail like,
Oh, was it like corporate stuff?
no, it was,
Corporate
yeah,
stuff?
it was, but I'll tell you what it was in a nutshell. Basically, it's so all right. So a few years ago, my husband fired this guy that he hired. He has a software company, and he hired this guy from India to, get him, like all this stuff on software. My husband ended up firing him after 2 years. The guy was very bitter. He's like, "You're gonna regret this." That's what he wrote in an email. "You're gonna regret this for the rest of your life." So my husband was like, "Whatever." It turns out this guy from India maybe hired 18 million guys in India to write horrible Yelp reviews. We were number one on Google. We went back down to the page 16 on Google. And so all these horrible Yelp reviews that were fake and all these horrible
Which
fake
is
websites,
illegal, isn't it?
right?
Yeah.
Horrible fake websites against the company. So my husband hired the FBI in India to go find this guy. Good
Well,
luck. You can't find a guy in
there's a lot of
India.
guys in India.
Can't
It's
find him.
very densely populated.
He found that out the hard way. So he ended up hiring a lawyer that was here in New York, and he tried to get these off. So the
Yeah.
lawyer was helping him get these fake websites off. In order to do that, you need a judge's name on it. Not a signature, just a name, and you copy and paste, copy and paste. My husband was like, well, this guy's so expensive. I'll just have one of my employees from Sri Lanka do it. My husband took it up with Google. Google didn't do anything about it. So it ended up getting traced back to his computer because the employee wrote the date wrong. So it ended up going back
Oh my
to
God. So
his
he was a jail on
computer.
technicality?
Right. Because it's
Jesus.
considered forgery to have a judge's name. And you
Okay.
can't copy and paste a judge's name. It wasn't like he forged.
I
So he
see.
went to jail for 9 months.
Wow. How was that for you and for him?
So that was traumatizing for me, but for him, he loved it.
Honestly, sometimes I
He
think
took a
about
break.
jail and I'm
Yeah,
like,
I know.
wait, this seems fun because you're like, there's nothing to do. You have to get up at a certain hour and you have to like basically meditate to get through it.
That's what he did.
But that's a really
It was a
beautiful,
camp. It was a camp. It was club fed. It was Camp Cupcake. It wasn't, it wasn't like this jail that
wasn't
you're
some
thinking
hard
about.
ass
No,
like guys there.
no, not
Okay.
at all. There
Oh,
was
so
one guy that was on his last year from Rikers. He was there
okay.
for 10 years and then ended up there for the last minute. But, that was one guy.
You get to know yourself when you go to jail.
I mean,
We all go to jail.
yeah, that's what he said. He was like, "You would love jail. It's social." I'm like, I'd have a captive audience, like
Yeah.
I can't go anywhere. I'd have to
Like
do
Nelson
comedy.
Mandela, very famously, like when he was in prison, like the meditation he did, and he had like a good attitude, and he was getting tortured, and like
Well, he
it,
didn't get tortured, but
or he was in a tough
right,
situation, and
right, right. He
he got
found
himself out
himself,
mentally.
right?
And I've heard a lot of stories about people that found themselves in prison wrongly accused of like murder and
Oh, wow,
rape.
yeah.
I could not be like that's a trigger for me of being accused of something I didn't do and then not having a way out of it. If you can get yourself to a peaceful state
Oh,
of
yeah,
mind when that's your
yeah.
situation, that is the
You've
most
won.
personal
You've
power.
arrived. You've arrived.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So he felt like, like we were fighting on the phone or whatever. Then he blocked my emails. Like he wouldn't, we would not talk for it was like a good 3 months.
Wow, the jail
Yeah.
person.
And then I moved back from Hawaii finally to be closer to him and, moved back to New York. And he didn't want to be with me. After jail, he went right to another apartment and I was devastated.
Wow. Did he say
And
why?
yeah, he was like, "We're fighting. I get to wear the same clothes here. I don't have any nagging in my life." He was extra spiritual, so he
Wow.
did not want to be with me or anyone. He wanted
Right.
to be on his
I
own.
get that. I get that.
So he wanted to be on his own. Then, um, I was on all the dating websites with his credit card,
Nice.
paid for premium,
Thanks,
and
Hubs.
paid for premium. But he and I then he wanted to get back with me.
Hmm.
Because I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be bitter about this. Let's just be friends. I don't even care anymore. Let's
You have
just be
kids
friends.
together. Yeah.
And then he realized he wasn't nice to me. He's like, just go find someone else. And the next day, he actually called me back. He's like, you know what? That was mean. I want you back. And I'm like, you want me back? You got to date me. And that's it. And that's
Wise.
when he had to date me again.
So he had to court you.
He had to court me like better than before because I said, I'm not doing an exclusive with you. I'm going out with other people.
Good for
This is
you.
it. And now you're going to have to really win me back because I don't know if I want you back. It
Wow.
was like a light switch. It turned me off completely.
Yeah.
That's when I really knew I'm going to be okay. I'm never putting anyone first before
Yeah.
me.
Right.
And the neediness, that girl, I shook her and she's dead. She's
Nice.
never going to come back.
Wow.
I've never brought her back. So the last 5 years have been amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. That's why I wrote the book. I
Yeah.
wrote the book during the pandemic.
Oh,
It was after we got back together. And I was like, you know what? I think this is good for my kids to know
yeah.
and put it out there. Maybe it'll help someone.
Absolutely. Well,
So,
in society, and in our family, people who raise us and the world around us teach us to seek, especially like movies and television, to seek validation based on these outside things when that is the least type of satisfying validation because it's not authentic.
oh,
Because
yeah.
not anything could go wrong. Like I used to cling so hard to romantic partners because they were my source of happiness. And it's like, that's such a dangerous, you can't have
It's
a good
so
relationship
bad. I
because
know.
that person's going to feel the pressure, whether they can articulate it or
100%.
not
I can't tell you
energetically.
how much that my husband's an alpha male, so that really did not resonate with him when I was so needy and everything. I didn't know I
Yeah.
was doing it.
Right.
I thought he would love that. He
It's
didn't
so,
like it. When I
right.
say that marriage takes work, people are like, well, why would we get married if it takes work? I'm like, no, you have to work on yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the work.
Yeah.
People also get complacent after marriage, like they don't dress up anymore. They get too sloppy. It's like,
Yeah. And that I don't like.
no
Yeah.
sweatshirts. Stop with the bullshit. Once in a while, you can wear a sweatshirt,
Yeah.
but don't be so sloppy
Be on
in
your
your
best.
marriage because the dance begins when you get married. And people don't realize how,
Interesting.
yeah, you don't get comfortable when you get married. That's the worst because people always want to know, how do people get divorced? I know exactly how.
Yeah.
So you're either complacent or you're too needy. It's those two
Mm.
things. It's a major, major balance in there.
Yeah, and
There's
it's
a
and it's a lot
sweet
of the
spot.
subconscious stuff at play that you don't understand is at play. And I think, especially too, I see this a lot with the Rise We Fuck podcast, which is people writing us in for 10 years. People will get into a relationship with somebody who does something so obviously wrong, hits them, is emotionally abusive, cheats, whatever it is. And it's so easy for our ego to focus on, well, they're the one who needs to change.
Right,
Obviously, they're the one doing the bad thing. And it's like, no, girl, you or boy, you need to change. You're the one who
right,
needs to leave.
right, right,
You
right,
can't keep accepting this
right,
behavior.
right.
It's too easy to focus on society and your friends and your family. Like, leave, like, he's bad. But the change is in you.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's really
amazing.
powerful.
It's very good perspective. And I have to say, with all the experience that I have now, I think I could help people
You really can.
in the fact that I was needy, but now I'm strong and now my marriage has never been better.
That's great.
It's in
That's
a
so
great
exciting.
place to be. I mean, I'm a late bloomer. I'm in my 50s. So it's like, I wish I knew this before, but
Of
that's
course.
not when I was supposed to know it.
No, right.
And so now is when I know it. And now I have a podcast and now I'm freshly talking about how I could actually say I went from here to here.
Yeah.
And there is a way,
Do
sometimes you have to break up.
people write into you?
No, I just started this
Okay, so you
podcast.
should promote. I feel like you would give really great advice
I'll
to
go on your
people.
podcast. I want to
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I want to know how you came up with the name, Guys We Fuck.
Corinne came up with it, my comedy partner, Corinne Fisher.
I want to meet her.
She's amazing. She's one of my favorite humans on the planet. Talk about like a marriage. We've been the podcast is 10 years
For sure, it's a marriage.
going.
10 years?
Mhm.
That's amazing.
And we were working together for 3 years prior to that. So we've been together for 13 years. We both say this because we're like, I have a boyfriend now I see him all the time. But like before that, she was the person I saw the most.
How long you with your boyfriend?
My current boyfriend, on and off, but solid, probably like 2.5 years. We
Are
don't
you
really know.
together now?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
great.
It's
I
the
met
best.
him. He's a really nice guy. He's
My
actually
favorite
one of the
human.
singers and band players at the Olive Tree, which
Yeah.
I highly recommend going in person on every Monday night there at the Olive Tree.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he's
One of the
he's
best
so
bands
talented.
I've ever
It's
experienced.
his talent is mind blowing, and the company he keeps with the musicians around him,
They're
they're
all amazing. And
mind
this
blowing.
Coleman is insane.
Oh
I
my
can't
god,
believe he was on Rogan.
Coleman Hughes wears so many hats.
I was,
He's
I
such
was like, is this the guy that I met at the Olive Tree?
Yeah, yeah.
I
He's
was
a
like
trombone
blown
player.
away. And
He's
so
an
talented.
author. He's so
And
his
so intelligent.
his emotional intelligence
Yeah.
is always
Yeah.
so captivating
And
to
he's
me.
fair. He's fair the way he
He's
speaks.
so fair, and I've gotten to be close with him,
That's
and
great.
because he lives right by Colin and I, and so we hang out with him a lot, and he's a great example of like, no, you can do all of these things if you want to, and it doesn't have to be stressful.
He's so even keeled. I liked him the minute I met him. I had no idea it was the same guy on Rogan. I'm like,
Yeah.
were you on Rogan?
Yeah, and he's
Was
a
that
CNN
you?
analyst. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
He's a rapper. He has these
Unbelievable.
most beautiful music videos. Like he's amazing. He's incredible.
Amazing.
But yeah, Colin,
Yeah, your boyfriend.
he's just, I've always
Was
wanted
he
to
ever
be.
married?
No,
Okay.
no,
So no kids or nothing.
no kids.
How old
But
is he?
he's almost 49. And he has a similar attitude with kids that I do. I'm like, if it's in the car, it's awesome. If it's not, it's okay.
Great attitude.
And yeah, because then it's like, it feels so good to have that. And I don't have that perspective on a lot of things in my life.
I think you found your person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really do. But when I first met him,
How'd you meet? I love the meeting story.
This guy Steve, who helped Noam Owens Comedy Cellar with the Comedy Cellar podcast, the
The
Roundtable.
guy that's outside that takes all the tickets?
No, but that is also
Okay.
Steve Calabria.
Okay.
He's a great guy. He introduced. I was there when I had a boyfriend at the time of 7 years. Colin and I both got out of 7-year relationships around the same time.
Wow.
But the endings were very different for us. I won't speak for him, but like for my ending, I was like, thank God, like I was ready to go. I was ready to hook up with people. I was excited, sad, of course, but also like this was a relationship that needed to end. And so when we first met, we were both with our partners, and his ex is a singer, and she's beautiful. And I met them, and I was like, I think the first thing I ever said to him was, "If you and your girlfriend made a porn, I would watch it because you're both really hot."
Wait, was she on? Was she on the actual? I just want to check this for sure. It's okay. If it wasn't, I just got a definitely got
Good view.
nice view just now, but I
That's
just wanted to
what-
see.
Just you bending over to check.
Yeah. So I'm very interested in the story because I think it's so great when people finally meet and it's like, oh, the shit that we had to go through before that.
Well, we went through a lot of shit with each other. Like it was super
Really?
toxic,
Like
but
what?
it was toxic on like
Because you heard
on
my
his
shit.
end, but also on my end, it was toxic. So when I met him, I was like, whoa, that guy's really hot. And
How
then
long you with him now? 2 years?
so that
On
when
and
I
off?
first met him, when
Yeah.
we first started seeing each other, like we the first time we hung out, just him and I, was on like a date at a bar. That was maybe 5 years ago.
Oh, so
Yeah.
it's 5 years that you know him.
Yes.
Okay.
And then at first I was like, this is interesting. Like he's really fun. And I always said to myself after that 7-year relationship ended, um, that person had just like a curmudgeon attitude that just depleted me in every way. And I was so used to that because my mother has had that, and my parents, could, were known to have that
You almost
type of.
settle. You almost settle because you're like,
Yeah.
no, it's better than being
It's your comfort
alone.
zone.
Yeah, it's
And
better than
honestly,
being alone.
it's what the trauma work that I've been doing. A lot of the one piece of information that was really helpful to gather was your nervous system is comfortable with what your childhood was, even if it was bad. This is your comfort level, and your brain is always seeking comfortable situations.
That's right.
But your comfort zone is the most toxic place to be.
100%.
And so I didn't know that, and most people don't know that until you find out the
I
hard way.
swam as far as I did.
Yeah, yeah. You have to challenge yourself.
Way beyond the comfort zone.
Yes,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have to do that. That's why I
Yeah.
started running.
That's
Oh
great.
my, I never thought I'd be a runner. I'm in love
That's
with
great.
it
I'll tell you
because it's
everything you want to know.
uncomfortable. I never want to run. I'm
What
always
size shoe
so
are
happy.
you? I have a
8 and a
shoe
half.
for you.
8.5. But I'm doing a 5K in June. I'm so
I
excited.
always say just sign up.
Yes,
You
exactly.
just sign up and just get to the start, and that's
You'll be so proud
halfway
of
there.
yourself.
Oh, I'm so happy you're doing that.
Yeah. Collins ran the New York City Marathon. He's ran 3 marathons, and we would go to cheer for the marathon. And I'm like, 26 miles?
Yeah,
It's
it's a
I
mind
can't
fuck.
imagine
It's a mind
running
fuck.
1 mile.
Honey, I was the same way.
And I'm like, and then I realized after a couple months, oh, it's your brain overriding. Like
100%.
you are so much more. And I believe this. This is one of my main beliefs. Every human being on this planet is so much more powerful than they could ever know.
100%.
And if we could tap into even 5% of that power within ourselves,
Yeah.
our lives will be amazing. We'll inspire the people around us to have amazing lives. Like it's the best thing you can do for yourself. And so,
Yeah.
but yeah, so when Colin and I first met, Steve Calabria was like, hey, Colin's single, and I was going to give him your number. Is that okay? He wanted your number. And I was like, huh, Colin?
Well,
Yeah.
Daddy went for you first.
Yeah. So he told me this
I
later.
love that. Those really work.
So, right. I didn't know. He told me this not that long ago. He's like, I've never asked for a girl's number. You are the first girl I've ever asked for her number. I'm like, really? Because he's so handsome. He's Irish. His voice will take you places. He knows how to use what he's got. People felt like everybody has a crush. Like he's charming. He's just the fucking best. And I always said to myself after my ex, his name was Steven, I love love. I love love. I'm not the type of person that I'm like, I do well on my own. I've learned that, but I love being with a partner because it's challenging and it's exciting. And I love the ups and downs because it makes you work on yourself a lot. And so I'm like, I want to date someone special. I've never dated somebody special, somebody who lights up a room. I care so much about getting as much knowledge as I can and learning about the human experience and my career goals. I'm obsessed with all these things. And
And he's an artist, so that also
yeah.
helps.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, how cool would it be to be with a person that also wanted more for themselves? Like, that's a power couple, you know? And so when I met him, I was like, I don't know. I don't know you yet. You're all over the place. Like, what's going on? And we started dating casually. And I got way into him. And I got so into him that I was the annoying friend of like, Krystyna, just stop fucking talking about him. Can you stop fucking talking? Like, I was that friend for a long time, and he started pulling away because he
Yeah.
sensed my neediness. I didn't know that was happening.
They smell it
They
from miles
smell it,
away.
as they should.
As they should.
Because that's not
Pheromones
a
is
healthy
also a thing when
relationship.
other guys like you.
Yeah.
They smell that too.
Mm-hmm. So I got clingy and needy, and he probably sensed it and was like, okay. And I lost it. And I don't do well with rejection. And that's a childhood. No one does. No one loves rejection, but I take it very poorly. And so I take it personally.
You could never be a guy.
Nope. No, I could not. I'm like, women are great at a lot of stuff. Rejection is not one of them.
Okay. You're not going to be proposing anytime soon then, right?
No. Actually, I just told him this morning I was going to propose to him because he might get SAG insurance. So it took up 90% of the real estate in my brain was taken up by him. And so we weren't seeing each other anymore, but we were hanging out. And then I told him one day, I was like, I'm in love with you. And his face was like, ugh. And I'm like, oh no, how I thought that was going to go. But he was so honest with me. And he said something to me once, and I'm like, this hurts, but I need to hear it. He goes, I don't like when we're not hanging out, I don't think about you. And I was like, copy that. Okay. And so, but I needed to hear that. I needed to hear that. And he said it. So he's a gentle man. And so he said it in a very gentle, loving way.
He's
but
honest.
He's like, you need to know this. Like, you need to know where I'm at. And I'm like, oh, well, message received. And so we were hanging out as friends, and then he started dating somebody, and I couldn't handle it.
Sure.
And so I'm like, okay, it's obviously it's not you. You're not doing anything wrong. I'm sitting here saying I'm okay being your friend. Meanwhile, in the back of my head, I'm like, please fall in love with me. Please fall in love. That is just so not a healthy dynamic for me, or obviously for him, but mostly for me. So I was like, all right, I'm going to back away. We're not going to hang out. We were about to be really close friends. And then I said, I've been doing this relationship podcast for 8 years at the time, or however long I've been doing it. And the advice we give people, I need to start taking. And I'm like, if I really believe that I really was like, this guy and I'm like, I think he's my soulmate or my person. But it's not working out. So I'm confused here. But I'm like, you know what? If it's really meant to happen, it will happen. And if it's not, then it'll happen with somebody else.
Great attitude also. I do that with a lot of things.
And I had that attitude while at the same time acting psychotic.
Right.
They coexisted.
Right. But you have it in you. You know you have it in you.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you're going to become a runner now. Like it wasn't for you before, because it's mind over matter. Your mind became much stronger. I don't know if you know, I ran an ultra marathon and won.
What's the ultra? How long is that?
It's past a marathon. This was 62 miles. I wasn't a runner before, but my husband trained me, and in 6 weeks he told me to do everything to the letter. I did it, and I won.
I cooked that. Jesus, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Running is so spiritual.
But you can't even do it with music on, otherwise they disqualify you.
So one of my favorite things about running is I don't have my phone. I don't have headphones. It's just me, and I'm listening to my breath.
That's good. That's good.
And transcendental meditation is something I have a mantra. I went to a center to get a mantra. It's still so hard for me to sit for 20 minutes and just do the meditation.
I can't sit and meditate.
Running is that for me.
Active meditation. I talk about it in my book. Yeah. Active meditation for me is so key because that's the one thing that I know for sure. If I just go for a walk, I'm already in a great place.
Yes.
I always tell people, just start walking.
Yes.
Just go outside in nature.
Yeah.
Just start doing exercise where your blood is pumping to your brain. You're getting oxygen to your brain. I swear you'll feel better.
Yes. And
it's
the
meditation. Yeah. That's amazing.
It's because you're getting so much oxygen. That is the runner's high. Yeah. And Wim Hof is this guy who teaches several techniques. One of them is cold plunges. He can dive into the Arctic Ocean, where everybody previously believed you would absolutely die of hypothermia immediately. Yeah. He can swim and just laugh and be giddy.
My husband too. My husband has it. He's on Everest right now.
Incredible. And the
insane.
breathing technique he teaches, I do his breathing exercises in the morning. But when I started running, I'm like, oh, this is like the Wim Hof on crack in terms of the breathing that you get.
When I have anxiety, my breath is like, I can't catch it.
Yeah,
I
breath is
and
so
I didn't know
important.
what was wrong with me for like a whole month in the winter. There was something that I was going through, and I was like, I can't get my breath. How come? And
Yeah,
now I realize why. Because I
yeah,
was sleeping fine, but I couldn't get my breath
because your
when I
brain
was
was.
conscious.
Mhm.
And I was like, what is going on? It was breathing. It
Yeah,
was totally messed up. And I'm totally aware of it now.
yeah.
It's
We
from
don't get
anxiety.
a lot of us breathe so
It's
shallowly, and
amazing.
so yeah, it's running's incredible. But like, yeah, Colin and I have, like, when we got together, we finally, I was like, no. And then we would go on these like Airbnb vacations together as friends and sleep in separate beds. But I'm like, damn it, I really want to be with him. And then so
Oh,
something clicked. And then
so you had to go through all
we
that.
went through a lot
That's what it
of
takes.
hardship.
But
And
that's why it's going to work.
right. And so
If
now I'm
you
like,
didn't have that, then when was it going to happen later? In other words, it will
yes.
happen at one point.
So it's interesting. That's a pattern in my life in terms of my earlier life was the toughest. I mean, not to say I'm going to experience tough situations
Oh yeah,
until I die, but I believe
especially if
that
you have kids.
of course, a lot of this intense inner turmoil happened when I was a child. So my nervous system was just so fucked.
Yeah.
And so, but now I have this. I'm so happy for the first time in my life, and it's like I wake up every morning
Do you
so
always feel like that's going to
thankful.
go away?
No, I
Oh,
don't,
good.
because you
That's a
know what?
great, healthy feeling.
Right, because I go,
I did that
I'm
for
going to be put in
years.
situations where I'm going to feel like I'm right back at this place. It's scientifically it's going to happen. But I know I've already gotten out of that place that I didn't think I was ever. I was so suicidal. That I couldn't get out of, and I did it. So next time I'm in this place, I'll go, oh, hello, old friend, and I'm going to get through it.
That's
It's going to be okay.
amazing. I hope people are getting something out of this because I also had that same exact feeling. Because I was also in that place of total deep sadness, I'm like, if you go so
Mhm.
deep, you go too far,
Yeah.
and you can't get out of that hole. So the minute it starts to happen, let it sink in,
Mhm.
and then start using the tools that I write in my book, which are the 8 pillars of health. You got to get a lot of sleep, you got to get hydration, you got to get
Yes.
everything. If those are not in check,
Then
you're
your
going
brain
to
has no
get
shot.
right. So you have to use the tools that I put in this book. It's really just a reminder, but everybody knows what to do.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you a reminder of what to do. And basically that's getting you out of that hole.
Yeah.
You know, like inch by inch, you're getting out of that hole with those tools and with those 8 pillars of health. And that's why.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I'm somebody who I'm always reading like 5 books at once. I love reading.
I'll give you
Love it
this
so
book.
much. Yes, I would love it. But a lot of the reading I do is like in the self-help
Yeah, self
category,
help.
and it's been so helpful when all these authors are saying something very similar. But
Yeah.
that's very necessary to take
Oh,
in the
it's so
message from
necessary.
different points of view, and then it starts to sink in, and then the coolest thing in the world happens where you witness yourself act in the way you've always wanted to act, and
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah.
oh God.
Yeah. And when you execute something, like people can go to school all their lives and then just not learn anything. But why don't you execute what you've learned? Like
Yeah.
use the
It's
tools.
exciting.
Yeah, that's a really good place to be when you start seeing it. And then you start seeing when I see my kids mirror it, I'm very happy.
Cool.
Like,
Yeah.
some of them are like in their own head, they're shy, but they see that I'm talking to anyone on the street at any time.
Mhm.
So now when they're not with me, they discover that they could do it
Yeah.
because they've seen it happen.
Yeah.
But if they
You
didn't
need an
have me as an
example.
example, they would probably be like, not talk to people.
Right.
And so they get out of their shell that way. And
And
I think it
connection
helps
is
them.
like when I'm having a bad day,
Everything's about
a,
connections for a
a,
comic, right?
a smile from a stranger can totally make
Oh,
the
for
day better.
sure.
Or like going to the grocery store and the cashier's like, "Hey, how you doing?"
Right.
And I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
hey."
Yeah.
And it's connection. The opposite of trauma and the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yeah. It's not just the stage. I don't need to be on a stage. I need to connect with people. So, like, even this is already giving me my whole outlet. Uh, Talking to somebody at the cashier at CVS, just talking to them and just making them laugh made me
Yeah.
feel better.
Yeah.
I already felt better. It
Yeah.
already upped my game.
Yeah.
I was better than before,
Whenever I
and
do
they were better than before because they laughed.
exactly. And they had
That's
connection
one of the
too.
pillars of health.
Connection's not one way. It's
That's
two
one of the
ways.
pillars of health that I
Yeah.
write
It's a
about.
big
It's
one.
a big one, laughter.
Yeah.
Do you know I would cry though if the sound didn't come out on this thing?
How do you mean?
Like, as I didn't test it the last time, and I'm
Oh,
like, if this didn't test the right time,
check, check, check.
no, it's checking now. It's totally taking away the magic of this podcast. But I'm just saying that, like that like crossed my mind while we were talking. I'm like,
Yeah.
I will cry if we had to do this again.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I mean, I'd look forward to having you
Yeah.
again, but I'd be like, this was so good and juicy.
Yeah.
This was so organic.
Life is so fascinating. I think we have people's stories and experiences are the most precious forms of knowledge that we can get. And so there, I know everybody has a podcast, but it's like, that's kind of cool because I want to hear everybody's story. I want to hear everybody's story because like I was saying earlier, like we're all here to learn stuff, but then we're here to learn our own things, but then I want to learn from
You
other
never
people's
know where you're going to get
experiences.
that holy cow, I would never thought of it that way.
And light bulb moments take a lot
Yeah.
of work to like build up. Like you have to be doing a lot of stuff.
Just a reminder.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, I have to call that friend. As I said, charity is not just giving away money. You have to also maybe just give someone a text.
Yes. I said
I'm
this.
thinking about you.
I have a Patreon that I do, but I run group. It's not group therapy because I'm not a licensed therapist. I call it group therapy.
Yeah.
We just hop on a Zoom once a week
Yeah.
for an hour and just go around and talk
Yeah.
about like whatever's happening and the perspective switch to hear about somebody else's issues. It's just it's not in a way of like, oh, I'm not doing that bad. It's not like a reality
Right.
TV kind of thing. But it's like we're all just out here trying.
Yeah.
And all
Just
we want
talking
is
it
to like
out.
be loved and to be seen and to be heard.
Yeah.
And
Some more than
somebody's
others.
of course. Well, some people, yeah, they're
Yeah.
trying to fill a void, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
ain't the way, boo. But you'll
My
figure it
husband
out.
wants to know, how do I he goes, why do you want to go to this dive and just, tell jokes to people that are drunk and all that? He goes, am I not telling you you're pretty enough?
That's funny.
I said, first of all, no, you're not. And
Yeah,
second of all, that has nothing to do with it.
yeah,
He just doesn't get it.
yeah.
He's not a
It's
comedy
connection.
guy.
Yeah,
He just doesn't get it. He's just like, everything is an inner piece for him. Like,
right.
so he's been to 5 of my shows in 13 years,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
which is fine.
Yeah, because
I
it's
don't
like
want
if
him
you
there.
don't get
It's my
what it
thing.
is, then I don't want you here,
It's
really.
my thing.
Yeah,
It's my thing.
which is
Whenever
important to have.
yeah, like he's like, you have comedy friends you can talk to, right?
Yeah,
So that's not our thing.
yeah.
Our thing is something
I think it's so
completely
important to have
different.
separate things.
Yeah. And I wanted to impress him so much. That's why I got into running.
Mm.
And then I turned it around and I'm like, oh my God, it impresses me more.
Yeah.
It's about
Yes.
me now.
The best relationships in the world, romantic and otherwise, but like romantic is the one you're with the most. When they inspire you to want to be a better version of
Yeah.
yourself, oh my God,
There's
that's the
such a
best.
different way to think about romance that people are not aware of. Like the romance novels, all this stuff that happens in movies and stuff when the music swells and everybody gets involved. Let me tell you something. All your emotions and everything, it is so,
It's all a lie.
it's all bullshit.
Well, and on every song
My
about
daughter's
love.
22. She's caught up in that romance stuff.
Mm,
She watches stuff. I'm like, you think you're in that movie. That's a big problem. That's
Yes.
not real life.
Corinne says often, she goes, I think the most, because she had a very healthy upbringing. Her parents were amazing and lovely and nurtured her
same.
individuality.
Yeah.
She's like, the thing that traumatized me the most were movies because
Yep.
then I grew up thinking I got owed this
Yep.
like romantic,
Yep.
Can't
It
think of anything
fucks
else
with
love.
people's
But when it's like,
relationships,
look
100%.
at song lyrics, you complete me, you're all I need.
100%.
Ooh, that is
100%.
red flag
Yes,
city.
yes.
What?
It gives you a fantasy to deal with, but then you have to deal with the real life.
Yeah.
And that real life, it's too much pressure for a man to do all that shit
Yeah.
that these guys are lying about in the song.
Right.
It's just too much. The song I like, that song All by Myself, like where the guy is really
Yeah.
like, or
Yeah.
I'm Not in Love.
Yeah.
That song.
Yeah.
That song is the opposite of a love song, but it's written as a love song. In other words, it sounds like a love song, but he's really saying, I really don't like you.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God. It's not even the way, it's what he's saying that
Yeah.
no one's really paying attention to. I'm like, did you hear what he said?
Yeah.
He says he's literally telling you he's not in love. Take it.
Right.
And there's moments of romance, which is great. It helps you.
course.
It helps you. Without that, you can't have the relationship. But
It's fun and
it's
exciting.
fun, but you can't keep seeking it like a thrill a minute
Yes.
because then you'll never be happy with
Right.
the downside of the
Well,
relationship.
and the irony is if you approach a relationship from this place of like, we need to be compatible and we need to have mutual respect for each other, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, that seems so not romantic. But then you can actually have a much better time in the relationship because I think a romantic relationship, when it's good and healthy, it's beautiful.
A romantic relationship to me is he did something for me, not because I asked him to.
Yeah.
He did something for me because he really does care. He
Yeah.
thought about me. He thought about what I said to him a week ago. He was like concerned about it.
Mhm.
Text, Hi, how you doing after that thing happened? And he never used to do that before. I
Wow.
used to call him all the time. Now he calls me all the time. But besides that, sometimes when something happens to me, he looks like he doesn't care at the time. But then later, he's like, I thought about what you said. Are you
Oh,
okay?
yeah.
And I'm like, that's all it took.
Beautiful.
That's
And
it.
you know what I hate the phrase, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks." I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah, you
yes, you
can.
can.
Absolutely.
It's the it's these people that want to stay stuck. You don't have to
100%.
be stuck. You can absolutely change it, but if
100%.
you have to want to change, and if you don't, well, now I mean, there's nothing we can do. I'm gonna walk away. But
Right, right.
yeah,
Well, you both have to be willing to change. We went to
yeah,
marriage counseling, we did all that stuff, and it helped at the time. But later on, the actual ultimate work was, you want this or not?
yeah.
We both wanted it, and we're both ultra marathoners, so we both have that mind over matter
When
thing.
you have a
So
goal,
you have that, you're gonna last. If you
yeah,
have like the endurance mind, then
yeah.
you can get through anything. And when people think they have real problems, like I'm like, "Oh my god, 4 in the morning, my kid was choking and I had to take him to the that's a real
Yes,
problem."
that's an
You
emergency.
know what I mean? So that like, how are you dealing with it? I have anxiety, my husband doesn't. He can stay calm. He does get angry, but, like, he could stay calmer than I can.
Yeah,
So, I remember we were getting off a plane once, and it was, like, delayed and whatever. He was like, "Look, it's 3 in the morning for us. You could either really react and panic, or you could be like, you know what? We're going to eventually go to sleep and this is all going to be behind us. Which one do you want to do?"
that's a
And I was like,
wow.
"Oh my god, okay. All right, if you put it that way."
Yeah,
Because in the moment, you're not thinking about logic. You're
yeah.
like just like, "This is
Yes.
my reaction,"
Yeah.
and it's a knee jerk. And he's like, "You've done it before that way. It never works. You just get me angry." Like my father passed away on a business trip, so I never saw him come back
Mm.
alive. So whenever my
Oh,
husband was going on a business trip, which was often, or
of
any type of trip, I would have this anxiety and I would be
course.
like more needy and this and that. And he's like, "Vic, I gotta live my life. You can't give me this.
Yeah.
You can't give me this.
Good for
I'm
him
taking
for
it."
putting his foot down and
Yeah, and
going,
he's like, "I can't take the bait. I'm not taking the bait. If anything happens, it happens, but you can't control it anyway."
Right.
And it really just put me at ease. It doesn't always work, but look, Everest is a lot, but whatever. Anyway,
That's
we should
amazing.
wrap this up because you have to go.
Well, I've got
But
10 more minutes if you want me to
okay.
go 10 more minutes.
Well, I'm having anxiety just not knowing if the sound was on the mics as opposed to the laptop.
Right.
Not that you guys need to know that, but I'm just being really
Behind the
honest.
scenes. Yeah.
This is like the behind the scenes, the boom mic is showing, but I just wanted to, I wanted to wrap it up anyway because I'd love to have you back. I'd love
Yeah.
to have you just continue a conversation because you're so interesting. You've
Thank you.
always been interesting from the minute I met you.
Oh, thanks.
And you didn't know who I was because I was just a comic fanning. I'm like, oh wow, she's so interesting. And then later on, I think it just became natural that I met you somehow. I don't know
Yeah.
how I met you after that.
Yeah. And then, well, the last time, like, yeah,
How did
when
I meet you?
bananas, when you were
Bananas
hosting.
Comedy Club.
Yeah.
Yes, I was asked to host last minute,
Yeah.
and I was happy it was for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, so that's it. So I think we could, if you want to just tell everybody where we could find you.
Oh,
And
absolutely. There's so many places. My social media at Krystyna Hutch. Instagram is my favorite. Put a lot of sketches and my stand up out there. Guys We Fucked, I'm very proud of that I co host with Corinne Fisher. Anywhere you get your podcast. I have a solo podcast called The Voices in Our Heads,
oh
where
wow,
I just dig into self help
I didn't
stuff
know about that.
because I've just read, not, I'm going to say thousands, but that's exaggerating, like several hundreds of books that I'm like, I think I get it. I think I get what our biggest obstacles are. I mean, it's different, little shades of different for everybody, but like, this is where I feel like I'm onto something. And then I have a Patreon that I'm very, very excited about. Patreon.com/Krystyna Huchinson, where I do once a week on a Zoom. Let's just talk about it. If you're feeling like you want to die today, that's okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Talking about something
yeah. You don't always
already
need a
makes it
degree. You
less.
don't always need a degree to know exactly how to connect with people and
No.
how to do therapy. You could
Yeah.
do therapy by just talking it out sometimes, or
Yeah.
having experience and giving someone else your knowledge.
Yeah. Or just listening to
Yeah.
somebody. Being listened to when you're not
Oh,
used to that
it's
is
one of the
so
best.
profound.
It's one of the best. It's one of the things Dale Carnegie talks about in that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, I've never read that, but I
My
want to say
father's
that.
Bible. He paid
Really?
us to read it because he was angry we weren't reading it. He's like, I know you guys don't want to
He
read.
paid you to read
Yeah, he
it.
goes, I know you guys don't want to read, but if you read this, I'll pay you. And he had the signed copy in his bag at all times, like it was a Bible to him.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, that
That's
was
the push for me to get that
yes, it
book.
was very, very good. And my daughter read it once. She goes, "Wow, this book is incredible. I should follow this." She goes, "Nah, I probably won't, but it was really nice to read it." I'm like,
Yeah.
"You know, we've been telling you to read that book for years, right?" So she said, "Oh, my friend told me to read it." I go, "I told you to
Sometimes it
read it."
takes somebody
That's
else.
all
It's
it
like, oh, by
takes.
the 10th person that tells me, you're like, oh, look at
Exactly.
this book.
All right. Well, basically, you can find me on Instagram, Victoria Makes You Laugh, and Wife's a Bitch podcast on Instagram. I've got shows coming up every Monday. We did that show also at the Perry. So if you
Oh,
guys
yeah, that's
like to
fun.
go to that, it's an electric room.
Oh,
It's an all
beautiful.
pro show. And that's on 7th and Perry Street. And that's on Mondays at 7:30. But if you want to follow Krystyna, Krystyna.
That is the spelling. Yeah.
So if you want to follow her, please, this is how we connect and this is how we keep doing what we're doing. So thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, I'm
Thanks.
so glad you have a podcast. What an interesting
So nice.
stories.
Yeah.